How is Son Heung-min so good? In the summer of 2002, 10-year-old Son Heung-min watched the South Korean team deliver some amazing performances at the greatest stage of world football, the FIFA World Cup, which was being hosted in South Korea and Japan. After experiencing the atmosphere, the crowd and the players, he couldn't help himself but declare to his father, "Dad, I want to become a professional footballer." Young Son doesn't realize the gravity of what he just said, but his father isn't someone who'd just laugh it off as most parents would. Instead, he tests his son's resolve by telling the truth to his face. It would be tough. Heung-min's father, Woong Jung-son, was a former pro who couldn't quite reach the summit himself but was determined that his sons could make it to the top. Yep, there's a brother as well. The training regimen that Son Heung-min and his brother were made to endure was tough. One of the drills that was a favorite of their father was keepy-uppies, but not the same kind of keepy-uppies that we sometimes do for fun. In his own words, "For 4 hours I would juggle the ball. Can you imagine 4 hours? After 2 hours, the floor looks like a roller coaster. You start seeing 3 balls. They were crazy memories for me." The good thing is, Son wasn't alone in all those tough training sessions. His brother Son Heung-min was there to keep him company. But the effects of training were not nearly as impressive for his brother as they were for him. When speaking with CBCC, Son Heung-min said, "Heung-min was like a sponge with sports. Everything he tried, he picked up quickly. Because we had a really strict dad when we were young, training wasn't fun. We were required to have a lot of concentration." But the ability to pick up things quickly wasn't the only factor that separated the brothers. It was also the trust that Heung-min had in the methods of his father. His brother also recalled, "Since the drills were relentlessly repetitive, so we were a bit bored. I was a bit rebellious and often ran into problems with my dad, but Heung-min followed the program obediently. That might be the reason he's in London and I'm in Chuncheon, Korea." The journey begins. Son Heung-min had been at it for 6 years when the doors to world football finally opened up for him. In 2008, German clubs Hamburg and Nuremberg struck up a deal with the South Korean Football Association where they'd give academy trials to 3 promising South Korean players. Son Heung-min, who was an FC Seoul youth player at the time, was spotted as a potential talent that could rile things up in Europe. And so 16-year-old Heung-min was given a trial year at Hamburg. Son had not featured in many matches back home since the boys were not allowed to join any team or academy until they were teenagers. Yet he was the only one among the 3 South Koreans who ended up signing for Hamburg's academy. Hamburg. A couple of seasons later, Son was already playing in the first team of Hamburg in pre-season. However, unfortunately for Son, after scoring the winner against Chelsea in a pre-season friendly, he injured his foot and was out for a couple of months. After recovering from the injury, he finally made his debut on October 30th, 2010, and what a debut it was. Son scored an incredible goal in his debut match in the Bundesliga, lifting the ball over the keeper and then slamming it into the empty net. Those hours of juggling practice weren't for nothing. That goal also made him the youngest Hamburg player to score in Bundesliga at just 18 years old. In his first season, he managed 3 goals in just 13 appearances, winning praises from everyone, including Van Nistelrooy himself, who said, "Son is the future of Hamburg." The next season, however, wasn't as impressive. Son had to deal with many injuries and Hamburg was on the brink of relegation, but in the end he managed to score 5 important goals for the team in 27 appearances. Among those 5, the winner against Hannover 96 was the most important one that made sure Hamburg would stay in the Bundesliga for the next season. Son not only made sure that his side would remain in the German top tier, but the next season he was a beast, scoring 12 goals for the team. Bayer Leverkusen had seen enough and they rushed to sign the young South Korean for a reported fee of 10 million euros, the highest transfer fee in the club's history at the time. Bayer Leverkusen. Son started well at Leverkusen and actually scored a hat-trick against his old team Hamburg in November. He ended the 2013-14 season with 12 goals in 43 games, earning a spot for his team in the next season's Champions League. The next season, he increased his goals to 17, which included an amazing hat-trick against Wolfsburg, which they went on to lose. He would have loved to settle the score the next season, but his future wasn't in Germany. It was in England as Tottenham came calling. Tottenham Hotspur. Son joined Spurs for £22 million or 30 million euros, which made him the most expensive Asian player in history. Son debuted for Tottenham in the Premier League against Sunderland on the 13th of September and scored his first 2 goals for the club 4 days later against Qarabağ FC in the UEFA Europa League. 3 days later, he netted his first Premier League goal against Crystal Palace. Although the start was impressive, it turned out to be a rather disappointing season for Son that was clouded by injuries and frustration of not getting enough playtime. So much so that before the next season began, he asked Mauricio Pochettino for permission to leave the club. But Pochettino convinced him to stay, and we all know how it turned out. The next season began with a different Son, who is now looking like the Son Heung-min who meant business. He received the Premier League Player of the Month award for September 2016 for his 2 braces against Stoke and Middlesbrough. He was the first South Korean and first Asian to receive the award. But it wasn't the last Player of the Month award that Son would win this season. He also received the award for April the following year. At the end of the season, Son had scored a career-best 21 goals in all competitions. Did you know that Son's own father has forbid him from marrying and having a child until he's retired? According to him, when you marry, the number 1 would be family, wife, and kids, and then football. Sorry ladies, not until he's retired. The 2017-18 season saw Son scoring his 20th goal in the Premier League to become the top Asian scorer in Premier League history. He also became the first Asian to finish the season as a top 10 goalscorer in the Premier League. The 2018-19 season wasn't much different, and Son continued to make waves in the Premier League. He received the Premier League Player of the Year award for 2018 and also became the highest-scoring Asian player in the history of the UEFA Champions League. The 2019-20 season saw Son scoring the Puskas winning goal against Burnley, which was not only the best goal of his playing career, but was also arguably one of the most memorable goals in the history of the Premier League. Military service. Mandatory military service of at least 21 months is something that all South Koreans need to go through before they turn 28 years old. 21 months is a very long time for footballers who need to be available for their teams for around 10 months of the year and are paid very well for their services, so this was a big problem for Son. However, there's an exception to this rule. Korean athletes who bring home any kind of individual or team silverware get exemption from military service. That's what Son and his Korean teammates were aiming for. Son got many chances along the way of getting rid of this sword over his head, like the 2015 Asia Cup where South Korea made it to the final only to lose to Australia in the end. Nothing was working for him, and it seems that Tottenham fans may have to bid farewell to their talisman at the peak of his career, until the 2018 Asian Games where South Korea finally won a gold medal after beating Japan in the final. The match was decided in extra time where South Korea scored 2 goals, both of which were assisted by Son. These goals were not only celebrated throughout Korea. The cheers from the fans could be heard loud and clear from North London as well, because now the Tottenham fans could keep their star player all to themselves. Although he was exempt from the 21-month service, he still had to go through a very short mandatory service. So when the Premier League was forced into a hiatus due to the pandemic, Son judged this as a perfect opportunity to complete the training, since it won't interfere with his playing time. By May 2020, Son was finished with the training a month before the resumption of Premier League action. Son didn't fail to impress as he won the Best Performance Prize for excelling in his trainee group. Golden Boot winner. Son managed to score 23 goals in the Premier League this season. This has made him the winner of the Golden Boot for the first time alongside Mohamed Salah, who managed to score on the last day and finished with 23 too. The most impressive thing about this is that Son has not scored a single penalty, so all of his 23 goals are from direct play. He just keeps getting better and better. With that, we come to the end of today's video. How good do you think Son Heung-min is? Tell us in the comment box below. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.